American Tobacco has warned that proposed legislation to regulate tobacco and vaping products could collapse the legal industry and hand it over to criminals. This warning coming during public hearings in Parliament this week as lawmakers consider the Tobacco Products and Electronic Delivery Systems Control Bill. It proposes strict new measures, including graphic health warnings, plain packaging for all nicotine products, and a ban on the sale of single cigarettes. So what does all of this mean? Let's unpack it with Johnny Moloto. He's the head of corporate and regulatory affairs at BAT. Johnny, thanks for joining us this morning. It's great to talk to you. Obviously, these are wide-ranging and sweeping changes that will come with this new bill. They are necessary in some ways, but in other ways, what are the challenges?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity, Michelle. That is quite correct. I think our starting position as BAT is that regulation is absolutely necessary, given the context of our environment in South Africa, where you have a huge unequal playing field with many of the players in the industry not being compliant with existing regulations. So our concern is really that you already have a market that is already split unevenly between those that don't comply, which are the illicit players that comprise about 75% of the market, and the remainder of the legal market that will comply. And in our view, regulation by its purpose and design is intended to regulate all of us, not just some of us. And this is the call out that we make to the ministry to say that how is it then possible to push ahead with regulations when we know that as it stands, you don't have full control of the market? And we believe the responsible thing to do would be to make sure that you bring everybody into the net and regulate everybody in order to deal with the health impact of tobacco products equitably.
The one issue that I know that particularly the township economy has taken issue with is the tighter controls that come with banning the sale of single cigarettes. We will know it as loose straws. Various other communities call it by another name, but essentially it's the sale of individual cigarettes, right? A lot of people can't afford to buy a full pack of cigarettes, and so for various reasons they might do loose straws. So what government is trying to do is to tighten controls around the tobacco industry, but banning loose straws doesn't mean that it won't happen. It just won't happen in the way that we think it will.
Yeah. Look, it's a very multifaceted and complex approach, because while we understand where government is coming from, to try and reduce consumption, the key challenge of this is that typically when you do regulations such as this, you would do a socio-economic impact assessment, because there are often unintended consequences with any regulation or legislation that will come into effect. And we believe as well, this process was really, really not done properly. It was really a tick box exercise, which is why you have this residual effect that are being raised by other sectors of society to say that, but what about our livelihoods? Because these are the people survivalist economy. And, you have to sympathize with everybody given the current economic environment that we operate in. So these are the concerns that we've been raising as well, but other stakeholders are raising different concerns of the unintended consequences.
Right. The Sowetan publication, speaking to a number of people in the township economy, raising exactly the issue that we just talked about, Johnny, the issue that people might not be able to afford a full pack of cigarettes at, say, around 60 Rand. But for these small spaza shops who sell loose straws at 3 Rand, one of those owners saying a single cigarette might seem small, but to me it is a steady income. And if I don't get that income, this is the point being made by the spaza shop owner, someone else will, someone who doesn't care about regulations.
Yeah, that is actually correct. And I wish it were the case that, those single sticks sell for 3 Rand. I mean, they sell for as little as 50 cents, because you can even get packs as low as 5 Rand selling in the market, when the tax in itself, that is due to the taxman, is around 26 Rand, 22 cents. So we're seeing very, very low prices that are intended actually to capture that market at the bottom of the market. But the reality is that we know why excise taxes exist. They exist for actually to deal with consumption. But what we are seeing, if you are losing 75% of that revenue, which totals to about 28 billion rands a year, that means you're not achieving your objectives. So it's multifaceted. There's a revenue loss, there's a health, and you're getting further and further away from your intended outcome if you do not attend to these issues, which is why we call that government needs to subject this bill to a proper socio-economic impact assessment and a cost-benefit analysis. Because in any regulation, there are trade-offs. You will not necessarily be able to capture everybody and every interest in this.
Yeah, So there are various aspects, as you said. It's an incredibly complex.
A few moments. Then what are our plans from a strategic standpoint?
Yeah, there are various aspects, Johnny. Revenue is one of them, and of course, health concerns for South Africans and for consumers is another one of them. In your experience, when we try to regulate an industry like tobacco, how do we balance the health aspect and are people and consumers, are they amenable to being regulated in that way? Or is it a case of the illicit economy thriving because of the regulations that are put in place?
Yeah, I think you're touching on a very critical aspect of this because, like I said, our point of departure is that you do need regulation because what we are seeing is that you get a lot of unscrupulous players who come into this space without any due regard for compliance with the law, and therefore it doesn't create an equal playing field. Given the current act that is in existence, that has been in place since 1996 with different amendments over the years, but still your prevalence, your smoking prevalence remains stubbornly high. It hasn't reduced when you compare to peer countries. It simply tells you that something is wrong in the system. And year on year, you see consumption increase. You see the cigarette industry also increase without any respite. So that means there is something that government is missing a trick somewhere. And that is why we say, first, you need to bring that market under control and be able to regulate all so that there is no one that can escape that net. And that is the critical challenge, because if you want to reduce consumption, know the size of your market, know who the players are, and make sure that everybody complies with those regulations. And if they do, only then will you start seeing through people paying their fair share of tax and not being able to produce at significantly or sell at significantly lower prices, making profits without taking due regard of what the regulations are intended to achieve.
And obviously, when the illicit market grows, the South African economy also suffers. Government coffers also suffer. I mean, you're from British American Tobacco, Johnny, so this might be an interesting question for you, but how do we rate in terms of cigarette consumption here in South Africa compared to around the world? And if it is much higher than, say, the global average, why would you say that is?
Yeah, I mean, I look at, as I said, you look at peer countries, you look at countries that have been successful in stemming the tide of consumption. They have not only put regulations in place, but they've put in place proportionate regulations in place. What do I mean by that? So there is a recognition in other countries, like if you look at countries like New Zealand, Sweden, the UK, those countries, what they've done, in addition to putting regulations in place, they've offered a space for reduced risk products. These products allow those smokers who are otherwise unable or unwilling to quit to be able to migrate to lesser risky products than cigarettes, because cigarettes produce more of the harms that we are currently associated with tobacco products. But in addition to that, they've put in place strict enforcement measures to make sure that the two go in tandem. Whereas our major criticism of the current bill is that it doesn't provide for any enforcement measures, which is the current situation we are finding ourselves, that the existing act is not able, doesn't have teeth actually, to impose punitive measures on those players that do not comply.
That's very interesting indeed. Johnny Moloto, let me thank you for your time this afternoon. He is the Head of Corporate and Regulatory Affairs at British American Tobacco, as we continue to talk about the new and existing changes to smoking and vaping laws.